In today's video, I wanted to do something that I haven't done before as part of my end of year videos, and that was to have a conversation about the reading achievements that I have made this year and the various failures of this year as well. And I'd also like to know in the comments, what were some of your biggest reading achievements this year? Whether that was just reading 5 books this year rather than reading none, or reading 100 books, or whether it was something else. Let me know in the comments what were your achievements this year, and also let me know what were your failures this year. What were the things that you said you would do with respect to reading, but you didn't end up doing. Now, the first thing that I'm proud of this year was that I finally managed to appreciate poetry. I've never really liked poetry, even in school when you're forced to read all kinds of classics. With the classic books, sometimes I just didn't like them, and probably mainly that was because I was being forced to teach them and it wasn't necessarily being taught in the most interesting way. But in general, I would usually get on with some of those books. Whereas with poetry, I just didn't understand it. I just have these memories of sitting there in class, being told to read these poems and it just going straight over my head. And even when we were then talked about what the poem is doing, it really just didn't gel with me at all. And I never really read poetry since then until this year. And I don't know what it was about this year, but I just seem to have really got a liking for poetry. I guess it mainly started with reading The Fairy Queen last year, actually. And I think what I liked about The Fairy Queen is that although it is an epic poem, it does have a narrative. It's a narrative poem. So me having greater sympathies with actual narrative stories was able to latch on to The Fairy Queen a lot easier because it's telling a story. And then through there I started reading things that were a bit more kind of symbolic and in the way that poetry often is. And I read Blake and I read Dickinson and various other poets, and it turned out that I really enjoy poetry. So that was probably the biggest achievement for me this year, was just finally coming to appreciate poetry for the first time. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on poetry as well. Do you find that you just can't engage with it, or are there particular poets that you think, even if in general you don't understand it or you struggle with it, there are just some poets that you do really engage with and connect with? Or have you always had a liking for poetry? Let me know in the comments. The next big achievement that I did this year was actually coming through on my decision to try and read the whole Bible in 1 year. I decided this year that I wanted to try and get through all of the main holy books, partly because I think it's interesting to get an understanding of different cultures, and also because from a literary perspective and wanting to understand books, so many books, at least Western books, refer to the Bible, and so having an awareness of that book is just quite useful for then if you're wanting to criticize, or well, not criticize, but critically assess other works. So I decided I'd read the Bible and I'd read 3 pages a day, because I divided the days of the year by the number of pages in the Bible, and it was around 3 pages. And I didn't stick to that. I did have a bit of a lull in the middle of the year where I didn't read any of it for a while, but I did manage to get back on track and complete it. It was a very exhausting task, probably the most exhausting thing that I read this year, because although there are some bits of the Bible that are, the famous bits that we all know about, those bits are fantastic, and there are some underrated and not bits that I didn't know about that were also fantastic. But there are also lots of dry bits of the Bible. There's lots of just talking about the lineages of various families with just a big long list of births and deaths. There's also the bits that just focus on the rules. In some cases the rules are outdated or focused on problems that we don't really have anymore, and those bits were quite dry. But overall I enjoyed reading it, and it was definitely a fascinating read. And what I liked the most was that the Bible is a book that lots of people talk about and lots of people have opinions about, and it was interesting to actually read it for myself and to kind of see where those different groups of people who talk about the Bible are coming from, and realizing that by and large it's quite a complex book and there's a lot you could say about it. I'm not going to get into those debates now, but it was really interesting just from that point of view to read it. So yes, I'm definitely glad that I read the Bible. I'm also thinking that because I saw this video of someone who read all the books of the Bible, and I'll link it in the description, and he basically does a tier ranking video of all the books in the Bible, and it's quite a fun video. I was thinking that I might do one myself because it seems like a lot of fun, and it's just, there are lots of books in the Bible, so it could be quite a fun thing to do. I'll see about doing that maybe in the new year though, and I would probably need to go back and remember what happened in some of the books, because I think there are about 66. I don't know if I'm quite right on that, but it's somewhere in the 60s. So it's quite a lot to remember and quite a lot to do. So maybe I'll do that, maybe I won't, but there's an idea for the next year. And the last thing that I'm proud of was achieving for the 3rd year in a row my Goodreads reading challenge. Every year I've kind of set myself a couple more books. I think originally I did just 35. Last year I did 65, I want to say, and this year I did 75. And I'm going to try next year and see if we can push it to 80. Although I think I may have reached my limit with reading. I'm quite blessed, or was quite blessed, because I was a PhD student before, so I did have a lot of time on my hands to read, whereas now I have 2 jobs and YouTube and a few other things going on, and so it's much harder to actually get the time to read, especially since June when my PhD officially stopped and I had other jobs and things. So I don't know if I'll be able to get to 80, we'll see. I'll give it a go though, because it's kind of fun to always try and push yourself. But at the end of the day, it's just a bit of fun, and it doesn't really matter if you read 10 books or even just 2 books in a year. You know, just do what works for you. And now on to some of my biggest failures of the year. The biggest failure to me, and that relates to the YouTube channel, is not putting out the Dracula Reader's Guide series. I read the book in 2 days, had a load of enthusiasm, wrote the scripts. Most of the scripts are finished. Some are kind of in a sort of outline-y, I'm not quite sure about this thing yet, but most of them are finished. I just need to sit down, record them and edit them. And I've been saying for a while they're going to come out, and I don't know if they are going to come out in the near future. So I'm definitely not going to commit to this. But yeah, that's one failure of this year, because I was really happy with my Wuthering Heights Reader's Guide series, and I do want to do more things like that, because I think it's cool to just kind of really focus in on a book that I have lots to say about. So hopefully I will find the time to do this series at some point, but I can't make promises, because I also don't want to just have, you know, a 10-week run of episodes on Dracula. It would be something that I want to do interspersed with my usual videos. So I need to find the time to record the whole thing and then just upload it, and I just don't know if I do have the time to do that yet. So that was one thing that I'm a bit disappointed in myself for not doing, but hopefully I'll rectify that in the new year. And another failure for me was failing to do my Shakespeare reading challenge, which was an idea that also came from a fellow booktuber who I will link to in the description as well, where she did one Shakespeare play, I think, every month of the year, and I think she managed to do it for all but maybe 1 month, if I remember rightly. I didn't even get through 4 months, so I'm not going to have a video where I talk about the Shakespeare books that I read, because I didn't read all that many. But yeah, I was a bit disappointed with this. I think again it came down to the fact that when it comes to reading plays, I like to be able to read the whole play in one sitting, because that's kind of how you would experience it if you were watching it. And plays are usually not very long, and I just think it helps for understanding if you just watch, or in this case read the whole thing all the way through. And I just haven't had the time to go through and read them in one sitting, so that kind of put me off a little bit. And then, you know, like with most things, if you fail to do something like more than once, then it just becomes a big spiral. That being said, I did go back and read one play later in the year. I think I read Richard II in November, so I did kind of make a comeback at the end there, but not enough to have a whole video talking about the plays that I didn't read in 2021. That said, I did enjoy what small part of this challenge that I did, and I might try again in the new year. We shall see. It depends. Like I say, work-life balance is all over the place at the minute, so I'm not sure that I'll be able to do such a thing. And that is it for my various successes and failures of 2021. As I said, let me know what reading habits you have set up for yourselves this year and what achievements you have made. And also let me know, if you care to share, what were your reading failures of the year. And also, since it's the new year, if you do have any New Year's resolutions with respect to reading, feel free to let me know in the comments. I personally haven't made any myself yet, aside from maybe committing to that Dracula series at some point, but I'm still not going to commit to that because I've committed too many times already. But let me know in the comments, what are your New Year's reading resolutions? This will be my last video of 2021, so Happy New Year everyone, ta-ra!